it's actually very significant to the trade talks going on right now. This dates back to 2015 when the Obama administration struck a deal with China over intellectual property theft and theft of the data of U.S. citizens. If this is true, then between 2014 and 2018, remembering this Marriott hack allegedly took place over 4 years, then they would have violated that deal, and that gives Trump some ammunition.
And David, what is Trump likely to do with that ammunition? What do you think should be the responsibility of U.S. companies here?
Well, companies in general don't put enough protection around what they're trying to do, trying to secure. And in this case, if you look at what China was going after, you have a lot of information there around where people are staying. From an intelligence perspective, it's a treasure trove. So I think, companies are looking at this, especially in the hospitality industry, saying, well, we don't really think we're a target, but, oh, well, maybe we are now. We should really start to look at what we're doing from a security standpoint to make things better. But I think response-wise, if they did violate that treaty, and in addition to what we're seeing out there with their trade agreements and everything else, I think we should retaliate with some possible countermeasures or sanctions or ways that we can try to thwart these types of attacks, because we do see nation-states compromising organizations on a regular basis, and it's a problem that we face all across this country.
What would retaliation look like?
Well, we have a number of different methods at our arsenal. One is we could do counters in a way of cyber, where we try to impact their infrastructure or put a hurt on them in some way, shape, or form. Obviously, with those types of escalations, it could also include military type of attacks. We could also look at any type of sanctions that we can do. All of those are kind of at our disposal right now, what we have. And we have a whole fleet called Cyber Command. Their whole purpose is to try to protect and defend our nation, as well as be able to conduct offensive operations in a kinetic military type of fashion as well. Wow. So there's a number of ways that we could retaliate against China that we have in our arsenal.
Kate, this is why, based on what David is saying, where he's not taking military response off the table, this is why I thought Secretary Ross's response was so interesting. We said, what should U.S. companies do then? He basically said, well, they need to step up. They've been scrimping. They need to spend more. Is that fair, or has it become so serious now between the U.S. and China that this needs to be more of an American military effort?
Well, I think, first of all, regarding Wilbur's statements, that it's really difficult for any publicly traded company internally to justify expenses, as you know, that aren't related to putting more on the bottom line or increasing the stock price. That is a lot of times where the cost of cybersecurity falls. So for a very long time, that has been what a corporation would call a cost center. It's just sucking in money and not really giving much out in terms of the share price. So I think that maybe that attitude needs to change at companies and just in the markets in general, to say, look, you can actually lose a lot off your stock price. You can lose a lot of money from these attacks, and that's very important. And you need to.
The government blocked earlier this year the Broadcom acquisition of Qualcomm, wasn't it, earlier this year, on national security grounds. We don't let Huawei phones into this country for those reasons. And so my question is, are we going to enter, as a result, David and Kate, of this hacking incident, enter a period where it's going to be harder for us to allow Chinese businesses to do business in this country, because we see what they and the government that stands behind so many of them are willing to do?
I think
Go ahead, David. Why don't you take first and then Kate?
I think that's absolutely how you resonate with these nation states. But we have a little bit of limited capabilities with Russia and what we're seeing with them, because we don't do a substantial amount of business with them. But for countries like China, where a large percentage of what they get as far as revenue is trade, those are ways that we can absolutely do it. And I have to agree to the point that companies absolutely need to be doing more when it comes to cybersecurity, and especially in the hospitality industry, have been notorious for not doing enough when it comes to cybersecurity. But at the same time, we can definitely hit other countries in their pocketbooks and do retaliation efforts that don't necessarily include military conflict, that causes them to take a step back and to not go as much on the offensive as we had. With the 2015 meeting with President Obama, we saw a substantial reduction in Chinese efforts to steal our intellectual property and other efforts. It didn't stop. We saw a substantial reduction in that. So those are things that we all have in our ability, in our arsenal, to do when it comes to this type of attack that we see from different countries.
Kate?
I think to counter that a little bit, I think you're going to see a lot of difficulty in making those kinds of moves, because we have so many huge multinational technology companies that have big business in China. And so saying that we won't use Chinese equipment in the United States, banning lots of different kinds of companies from working here, we're going to see retaliation for companies like Apple, for companies like Amazon and Google that do big business in China right now.